What's up, you guys? This is Rob from The Gay Guy Plays, and today on The Snapshot, we're gonna leave them gushing when we take a look at the Nami Skyla Prime. Now, you guys have probably already heard the spiel, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave their drop locations in the description box below, mainly because you guys know that I'm absolute shit at keeping track of relics. However, I do want to give you a bit of a heads up. This does require Mastery Rank 11 to craft. Now, clearly, if that doesn't work out for you and you want to get your hands on ASAP, you can pick it up via Hydroid Prime access. Now, usually with Prime variants, I like to reference the base version. However, the Nami Skyla Prime supplemental stats have received such a large bump that it feels like a completely different weapon, with the only thing of note that remains is that it runs with 70% of its base damage and slash. The reason this is important is because the Prime received a large boost to its status chance, jumping from 10% all the way up to 30%. It also went from being one of the slowest dual swords to currently having the fastest attack speed in its category, sitting at a base of 1.33. This all adds up to being able to apply a large amount of slash procs in a very short period of time, combined with the boost to its critical chance, which is now at a respectable 20%, and this thing can bleed an enemy right out of its armor. Now, as for the build, this one is pretty straightforward. It's a hybrid crit slash status build, and I only really have 2 points of contention on this one. Now, the first one, of course, is going to be Prime Fury. You guys can actually sub in a Berserker if you feel like, because this thing definitely has enough crit to enable it. However, as you guys know, I like Prime Fury because it's a little bit more consistent throughout, and I really like to do combos, so, you know, that's more of a me thing than a you thing. If you want as much speed as possible, go ahead and feel free to toss on that Berserker. The next one you're going to see here is Weeping Wounds. Now, usually with a critical build, you'd put in Organ Shatter, but the big thing for me is the fact that this thing's critical multiplier is only 1.5 times. So I actually went and tested an Organ Shatter versus Weeping Wounds, and to be honest with you, they pretty much perform the same, and I don't have Weeping Wounds on too many of my builds, and I found that Weeping Wounds was a little bit more consistent than Organ Shatter. So it's just, you know, it's just about consistency, and I'm gonna be completely honest, it really was not that far off to make any kind of big deal about it, so let's go ahead and take a look at how this thing performs. So the interesting thing about this weapon is the fact that it really doesn't feel like you're ever doing that much damage to your enemies. In fact, if you kind of saw there, we did make very quick work of Billy. However, you saw those numbers. It was like double digits dipping into triple digits. However, you never really ever saw it go into the thousands, which is the part that I find the most interesting, because I don't really feel like I'm doing that much damage when I see the numbers, but its efficacy just kind of like speaks for itself, and that's kind of the way that this weapon works. It's really fast, it's got a good chunk of status, it applies a lot of slash, bypasses all of that armor, and just basically makes mincemeat out of your enemies by just bombarding them with all of those procs, which is absolutely amazing. It's actually very similar to the way the Dual Commas Prime performs, but I figure we'll hold off on that and chat about that a little bit in the gameplay. So all in all, the Nami Skyla Prime is almost as impressive as its model is gorgeous, because let's be real, this is potentially one of the best looking melee weapons in game. I'm in love with the shape of the blade, and the ornateness of the guard is absolutely sickening. Let's be real, Fashion Frame is endgame, so that's really all that matters, right? However, if we're gonna talk about performance, this thing is pretty solid. Now, is it the best melee weapon in game? No, definitely not. There's a good chunk of melee weapons that will outperform this. However, let's be real, this is a difficult category to get into, mainly because of mods like Condition Overload and Body Count and Blood Rush, so there's a lot of weapons that are up there, right? However, this thing has looks and it has performance all in one, so I mean, that's a pretty big win, right? Now, that about does it for the facts and figures. However, if you want to chat a little bit more about how this stacks up against the Dual Commas Prime, stick around for the gameplay. Alright, so I'm gonna be real with you, I've already heard it, and I can already predict what's gonna happen in the comments section. There is so much salt there, I don't know if it's ocean water from Hydroid Prime being released or something, but I mean, damn, it is flowing as of lately. Everybody, or not everybody, but a good chunk of people have been saying, well, look at DE vaulting dual weapon and releasing another dual weapon that's like not even as good, and I'm like, oh my god, I don't know, did they like open the gates of Reddit and just let all of the animals out or something? I don't know what's going on. Regardless, I'm over it. I'm like, can we not please? Regardless, I did actually take the time and kind of take a look at the difference between the two, and you know, there are pros and cons for both. So straight out of the gate, if we are looking at the Dual Commas Prime, the Dual Commas Prime with its attack speed factored in, it's 81.9 DPS, and thus when it comes to the Nami Skyla Prime, it is 79.8. So in that aspect, yes, the Nami Skyla Prime is not as good as the Dual Commas Prime. However, we do also have to pay attention to the fact that the Nami Skyla Prime supplemental stats are better. I believe that it's got a higher crit chance, and it's got a higher status chance. So that mixed in with the fact that it does have a faster attack speed, it's gonna apply statuses much faster. So that means that you can stack up all of those slash procs. Now, am I saying that's gonna make it better? Well, you have to keep in mind that this is status chance, it is crit chance, so it's not gonna be 100% better all the time, but I do feel that that's kind of like the way that it balances out. Now, the one place that the Nami Skyla lacks as compared to the Dual Commas Prime is that the Dual Commas Prime actually has a 2.0 crit multiplier. See, and that's the part that like kills me. I'm like, ooh, if only the Nami Skyla Prime had the 2.0 crit multiplier, which at this point, the 2.0 crit multiplier isn't even all that uncommon, you know what I mean? It's not like super special or ridiculously crazy or something. It almost feels like the 1.5 crit multiplier is a little bit of a negative trait. I'm like, alright, we get it. You don't want us to make this into a crit weapon, you want us to focus this more on status chance. I gotcha. At least they're leading us down. The right path. You know, they're saying, hey, listen, we have a view for this, and we want this to be the status variant. We want you to focus a little bit more on status, but we still want to give you, you know, the tools to succeed. So here's a little bit of the crit chance to go along with it. So I kind of respect it in that aspect to kind of make them a little bit different. And to be honest, they do feel different. They play differently. Like I was saying earlier in kind of like the gameplay, like you can feel how that the Dual Commas Prime is a little bit slower, but hits a good deal harder. Like I was saying when I was like, oh, I didn't notice, you know, I didn't notice the what I was gonna say. I didn't notice that the Nami Skyla was hitting into the thousands, right? And that's something that the Dual Commas Prime definitely does. You definitely see that out of the Dual Commas Prime, but it's just not as fast, and it doesn't stack up the slash procs as much as this. Now, of course, the Dual Commas Prime does have a 75%. 75% of its base damage is in slash, you know, so that does make it a good slash weapon. However, you know, it's gonna take a little bit more time to build it up, because, you know, its base status is, I believe its base status is 20%, just like reading it off of the top of my head. So a part of me is a little bit kind of like, okay, it's like the Dual Commas Prime, you need to get a little bit more work out of in order to really top it out. It is going to have a higher kind of like top end, like when you get everything going, and as long as you're maintaining that melee combo, it is going to end up outperforming the Nami Skyla Prime, but the Nami Skyla Prime is kind of sexier. Like, I mean, let's put it out like that. If the Nami Skyla Prime is only gonna underperform a little bit less than the Dual Commas Prime, I'd rather have the sexier weapon, right? I mean, that's what it boils down to. I mean, look at how sexy this thing is. Right there, like the way that it kind of like has that kind of flare up towards the end, it looks so good. I mean, it looks kind of like bone too, almost kind of like a ceramic blade as opposed to the typical like steel blades. So that's always kind of like a nice different take on weapons, you know, kind of like the metals and whatnot. But regardless, I don't know, I feel like it's just different enough, and it kind of reflects the way that Warframe is at this moment, right? It's kind of like we have so many weapons that it's difficult to make weapons that are extremely different from each other, but still function. At the level that they function. And right now, kind of like the hot ticket items in in melee is definitely condition overload builds, and even better if you do a hybrid condition overload with a little bit of crit. So it's kind of like they gave us two different variations, one that's a little bit slower and hits a little bit harder, and takes a little bit more time to ramp up, as opposed to one that literally just lets you stack on the slash procs straight out of the gate. You know what I mean? So part of me is kind of like looking at it in that aspect and saying that they do definitely feel different, because the Nami Skyla just feels so much faster. And I mean, if you stack Berserker on it, this thing is just gonna be flailing left, right, and center, and it's gonna be a much different feeling. And that's what it boils down to as well. I noticed that like when I play the dual commas Prime, it's a little bit easier to actually land all of the combos, and that's mainly because of the fact that it is slower, so you can kind of see the moves a little bit better, and that's definitely what kind of hurts when it comes to the Nami Skyla. Is you know I like my combos, so that's why I was like, I can't put Berserker on this thing. If I ever plan on trying to do combos with it, it's like I have to like really try to time things out really well, as opposed to the dual commas where it's a little bit slower, so you feel the rhythm a little bit more and you get to do your combos and whatnot and feel all special. But hey, if you're a hack and slasher, the Nami Skyla Prime is gonna be like the perfect variant for you, because legitimately you're just like, I just want to like smash as hard as I can in order to go ahead and get apply all those slash procs onto there. I also kind of get this feeling that you could take out Weeping Wounds or take out Organ Shatter and like toss on a really good Riven, and I feel like maybe that's kind of the story that's been playing out with the with the Ballistica Prime and the Nami Skyla Prime. I feel like they're both really good weapons to toss some Rivens into. In fact, for those of you who were curious, because everybody was asking me which build did you end up going with, I ended up going with the build with the Riven, and I said that I wanted to do in the end. And my Rivens got fire rate and critical damage attached to it, because I know some people, some people are definitely curious about those kind of things. But yeah, so that's kind of my stance on the Nami Skyla Prime versus the dual commas Prime. Legitimately, in this game, we have so many weapons, and I saw them in the comments. They're like, oh, mastery fodder. I'm like, legit, in this game, if you really want to take it to that level of, oh, it's just mastery fodder, well, legitimately, aside from the best melee weapon in game, the best primary in game, the best secondary in game, everything else is mastery fodder, right? That's basically what it boils down to. If it's not the best in each category, then it's all mastery fodder. So it's either we get some side grades, or we're constantly power creeping towards, something insane, and at the end of the day, every weapon is just replaced by the next newest weapon. So y'all can't hate on side grades, and I mean, that's the thing that drives me absolutely nuts. If like a weapon is, on par with another weapon, maybe just slightly worse or maybe just slightly better, people are like, ugh, is this mastery fodder? Is this mastery fodder? Let's just see how the weapon performs. Can you use it in your day-to-day life? Is it something that you think looks pretty? Is it something that you enjoy playing? That's really all it boils down to, because when it comes down to Warframes, really, what does it matter what we use as long as it gets the job done, right? And people are like, well, it's not the most optimal. And I'm like, well, is it the most enjoyable? Ask yourself that, and maybe that's the question that matters the most at the end of the day, is less, is this mastery fodder, or is this mastery fodder that I enjoy using? So that is where I'm gonna leave you, and as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I'll chat with you guys next time. Bye-bye!